Hello and welcome back to Reading with Mo. We are going to be talking about a lot of books today, so this is probably going to be a long one. I'm just going to warn you guys now. I'm going to be talking about and wrapping up reviewing all of the books that I read in the pretty much second half of 2021, kind of when I stopped making videos. I definitely didn't want to not talk about them at all on this channel, so I figured I would just combine it into one big wrap up. We have about 40 books to talk about here, so I'm not going to be talking about them too much really in-depth or very lengthy reviews on each one, so that this video is not hours long. I'm not going to be pulling them from my shelves here because I'm way too lazy to do that. I will just be inserting images of what the titles look like here, especially because by now some of them I may have gotten rid of, especially when I was moving. If I sound a little bit congested, yes I am, because I'm currently dealing with COVID, so you know, it is what it is. I am definitely going to put my sweater on because it is freezing in here, and I turned off my heater to try and hopefully get no background noise because I'm definitely too cheap and don't feel like figuring out how to work a microphone to give you guys better audio for now, so this is just gonna have to do. Although it sucks having COVID, one good thing while you're quarantining is you can read a lot of books. So at the end of last year, I think I was like the last 3 days of the month I was just reading a book pretty much every day because I didn't have anything else to do while I was laying in bed. If you want to see my thoughts on the rest of the books that I read in 2021, I'll go ahead and make a playlist. I feel like there'll probably be 5 or 6 wrap-up videos. I know I did wrap-up videos, I think it's about May, so we're going to be talking about the books that I read from June to December. Like I said, just shy of 40 books. So let's just get straight into it. If you see me looking down, it's because I'm looking at my Goodreads, so I'm going to just be going in order of which months I read them. So first off, we got June. In June, I finished 4 books. Also, I'll want to mention about last year is I just did not have the greatest reading year. I wasn't really giving a lot of stuff high star reviews. I believe I only gave 3 books last year 5 stars, and one of them was a reread. So one of them, though, was in June, and that was a short story collection called The Office of Historical Corrections by Danielle Evans. I gave this short story collection 5 stars, but I do have a little bit of a hard time remembering now, so maybe I shouldn't have even given it 5 stars. Who knows? I'll have to reread and see, but maybe just compared to what I was reading at the time, it blew my mind, but now I can't even tell you any of the short stories themselves, but I do remember really enjoying it, so I should go back and reread it again. Not the best reading year last year. Next we have Unsettled Ground by Claire Fuller. Now this was my second time reading from this author. I had read Bitter Orange a few years ago, really enjoyed it. This book I liked, but I gave it 4 stars, but I feel like that was like me rounding up. I gave it more like 3.5 stars, but I felt more like rounding up than rounding down. And then this book, we're following 2 twins, and they're older, they're in their 50s. They live in this rented cottage, and it's definitely looking at them going through poverty and stuff because their mom, I want to say, dies, and then that's when it's kind of they're left to fend for themselves and figure things out. I do really enjoy Claire Fuller's writing, but just the story on this one didn't really intrigue me as much. I definitely liked Bitter Orange better. Then we have a modern classic here, and that is The Joy Luck Club by Amy Tan. I remember I wanted to read this book so that I could finally watch the movie, and I don't think I even got around to watching the movie, so maybe I should actually do that sometime today if I get a chance after this. I gave this book 4 stars. The book takes place in 1949, and we're following 4 different women who are all immigrants to San Francisco from China. And these women, they have like this mahjong club, and they meet together and they talk about their family and stuff. We get to know them. We also are following, each of them has a daughter, and I remember that kind of getting confusing after a bit because we are basically then kind of following 8 different perspectives, and keeping track of who was whose daughter and what storyline went to which was a little bit confusing at times, which kind of makes me want to go back and reread it again, or maybe once I watch the movie then it'll make a little bit more sense. Lastly, for June, I read Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. I gave this one 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. Probably give it, even thinking about it now, maybe more 4.5. Is probably one of the more memorable books that I did get to reading last June. Now this would have been like 6 months ago, so I feel like I still can remember a lot of the stuff that went on in this book. The characters are very memorable. We're following this guy who is the sole survivor on this mission. If he doesn't complete his mission, it basically means that everybody on Earth is going to die. So very high stakes. I like how Andy Weir's books, because I did read The Martian, I haven't read anything else by him, are very like kind of scientific thriller mystery books in the sci-fi genre. And I mean, I'm not going to give anything away, but there is one thing that happens in the book that was very interesting and definitely lent to me giving it a high rating, because I really liked the direction that the story went in, and I don't really want to like ruin it for anybody, and I'm sure it was a very big book last year, so you probably have heard already pretty much the basic synopsis of this book. Next, we're on to July. So in July, I finished 5 books in July. Most of these were audiobooks. I think almost all of these. Same with the previous month for June. I think, actually I don't think I read any, I don't think in June I listened to any audiobooks, but I think everything that I read in the month of July was audiobooks. So then we have Instruction for Dancing, which is by Nicola Yoon. I love Nicola Yoon as a writer. What was that one? My favorite one of hers I've read so far is The Sun is Also a Star. And this one is called Instructions for Dancing. It's a young adult contemporary book, kind of has a little bit of magical realism if you want to throw that in there. It's not all completely grounded in realism. We're following Evie, and she has the power when she sees a couple kissing, that she can see basically the end of the relationship, whether that's ending in however they break up or if someone's dies or whatever. She can see the couple's relationship from beginning to end in the blink of an eye when she sees them kiss. I thought this was a very cute young adult book. I don't really reach for a lot of young adult books, but I do have specific authors that I like to return to when they do release something new, and Nicola Yoon is one of those for me. And I don't know if I mentioned, but I gave that one 3 stars. I thought it was very enjoyable, and I definitely enjoyed the time that I read it. Then we have The Final Revival by Opal and Nev. This book, I believe, was sent to me by Simon & Schuster, and this is written by Donnie Walton. I gave this one 3 stars. This is a historical fiction novel. Kind of gave me vibes of Daisy Jones and the Six, even though I haven't even read that book and I don't have plans to. But this book takes place in the 70s, and we're following this interracial rock duo. She's the singer and she's black, and he is the guitar player and he's white, and their journey together is definitely told through like in a way that's supposed to make it sound as if it was like a real story, because we're having like following interviews. It's like interview style with different people, and I thought it was enjoyable. The whole premise behind Daisy Jones and the Six never really intrigued me, and this book very much gave me like similar vibes, kind of what I expected from that book. So while I don't think it was like really bad, it's just not something that really, I'm just not really into the whole interview style books, or at least I haven't really read one that I've enjoyed a lot. Then we have Clara and the Sun by Kazuo Ishiguro. This was my first time reading a book by this author. I gave this one 3 stars, but I thought it was okay. This was a new release from the author. I definitely was seeing it around everywhere, so I wanted to give it a try myself, but I do want to try Never Let Me Go and The Remains of the Day by this author, because I feel like those are the 2 that are like really well known, and they're like well received, and a lot of people enjoy reading them, so I want to give those ones a try. In this book, we're following Clara, who is an artificial friend, and when I first started reading this book, I thought it was going to be a 5-star read for me. I really enjoyed the beginning, when Clara is in the store and interacting with the other AIs and waiting to be taken home with a family and chosen. I really just enjoyed that part. But then once she's actually adopted and stuff, or purchased and goes into the family, it just kind of really took a different turn than I was expecting, and I just didn't really get much out of it. I found it frankly a little bit boring, so that's kind of why I gave it 3 stars, because I really loved the beginning, but then like the middle kind of was losing me, and then by the end I just was finishing the book to finish it. Then next we have my first encounter with Robin Hobb. I read the first book in the Farseer trilogy, Assassin's Apprentice, and I gave this book 4 stars. I feel like if I eventually, obviously probably years from now, because there's like 16 books in the series, but once I go back to reread this series from the beginning, which honestly has the potential to be one of my favorite series of all times, I think I could possibly give this book a 5-star. I just was so critical with everything I was reading last year, and I was just in a weird reading mood, so I just was not really rating too highly, but I did give this one 4 stars. I would say like a really high 4 stars. In this book, we're following Fitzchivalry, who is the bastard son of Prince Chivalry, who lives in this kingdom. And though he's the bastard of the family, he's still kept at court, and we're following him and everything kind of that happens because of that. It's so hard to explain the series now, and especially this first one, because I don't remember specifically what happened in each book now in this series, but I just remember I really enjoyed it. I'm not super into fantasy. I'm very, very selective and picky with what I read, but I'm very glad that I chose to pick up this series. The last book that I got to for the month of July, and that was The Other Black Girl by Sakia Delilah Harris. I gave this book 3 stars. I really liked how it started off. I feel like a lot of people, they're kind of iffy on this book because it was sold to them as being a kind of a mix of Get Out meets, like, I forget what else they compare it to, but it's definitely marketed as more like a mystery thriller, something that's gonna like keep you on the edge of your seat. And I don't feel like you really get that too much with this book. Like, I do definitely see like the thriller aspects of it, the mystery aspects, but I wouldn't say this is like an edge of the seat thriller, like what people are kind of expecting going in. And when I went into this book, I didn't even realize, like, I just liked the cover and the title, and I figured I was going to give it a try. I didn't really know what the book was about at all going into it. And we're following 2 young black women who are working in publishing in New York City. One has been out with her publishing company for a while, and then eventually they hire another black girl, the other black girl, and kind of just seeing how she deals with microaggressions and things like that in the office. And the book does kind of just go to this weird place, and I listened to this on audiobook, so I feel like maybe there were some parts I missed or something, but I just felt confused a little bit towards like the middle half, towards the end. I didn't really understand everything that was going on. I feel like maybe if I reread this book I would get a little bit more clarity, but I at this point don't even know if I really am interested in reading it again. And we're on to the month of August. So August was the month that I ended up moving out of my parents' house for the first time. So I was not really in the mode of reading for sure. I finished 3 books that month. All 3 of them were once again audiobooks that I listened to. The first was a nonfiction book, which was The Blood of Emmett Till by Timothy B. Tyson. I was vaguely a bit familiar with Emmett Till's story before. This is one I feel like I need to reread because I was moving and I had a lot on my mind at the time. Nonfiction, it just wasn't the way for me to go for this book, but I did enjoy, like, you know, the parts I feel like I was paying attention to as much as you can. Enjoy a book that's about such a sad and tragic part of history with the lynching and all the other things that it talks about with segregation and stuff. And this, if you aren't familiar with Emmett Till's story, definitely look into it. It's a very triggering story, but it's very an important one for sure. This book I feel like does a good job of really explaining everything around the times and the events and everything that happened. It was very thorough, so I would definitely feel like if you're wanting a book on the subject to pick this one up. I also listened to the audiobook For Survive the Night by Riley Sager. Looking back, and I've seen that I gave this one 4 stars. I think I gave it more like 3.5 and I rounded up to 4, but thinking back now I probably would give this more of a 3 stars for me. This one, I have read all of Riley Sager's books so far. This one definitely wasn't my favorite. Like, I feel like it's pretty much a general consensus between most people who've read this recent release from Riley Sager, but I have enjoyed his other books, so I will continue picking them up. And in this one, it's a mystery thriller following our main girl Charlie. I believe this book takes place in like the 90s. She is going across the country and she thinks that a serial killer basically is who's giving her a ride. And she has these movies that play in her head randomly. This book definitely wasn't like the most predictable. I think that's why I enjoyed it, because I was just listening to it. I was listening to it to listen to it, not to try and like figure out everything that was happening necessarily myself. And I think it was decent enough for the time. It kept me entertained enough to pay attention, and that's pretty much what I need from an audiobook when I'm listening to it. And then the last book I listened to in August was Queen of the Tearling, which is the first book in the Queen of the Tearling series by Erica Johansson, which this is I think this is young adult. I can't remember now if this is young adult or adult. I was able to complete this whole series, so the next 2 books I finished the following month in September, which were Invasion of the Tearling and Fate of the Tearling. And I'm just gonna give you guys a wrap up of all three at once, because honestly, I don't really remember too much. I see that I gave this book a 4 stars. I gave the second and the third 4 stars, but I'm having a hard time even now remembering. I just had so much going on at that time. This was an easy to listen to audiobook series where it didn't take too much brain power to follow along. In this one, we're following, the first book starts off where we're following Kelsey as she's turning 19, and she's been raised in exile, and she's going back to the castle of her birth to secure her throne. I can't even honestly give you guys more than that. I'm sorry. I just really cannot even remember any of the series at this point in time. But yeah, so the month of September I spent listening to audiobooks. I listened to those 2 audiobooks, the 2 ones that completed the Queen of the Tearling series, and then I listened to the 2 audiobooks for Assassin's Quest and Royal Assassin, books 2 and 3 in the Farseer trilogy. I gave both of those 4 stars. Definitely those ones did deserve 4 stars. Maybe Queen of the Tearling I should bump down to 3 because they weren't very memorable to me. And I didn't feel the need. I think I unhauled them. I didn't even feel the need to take them with me when I was moving. Actually, no, I think I do have them here left in my unhaul stack to get rid of still. So yeah, so those series I pretty much all I read for the month of September, and then October is kind of when I started getting back into wanting to actually pick up physical books again. I completed 4 books in the month of October. Actually, I think one of these was a DNF, and one of them I think I listened to an audiobook as well. I actually had a few DNFs I think in October. So around October is when they released the shortlist for the Man Booker Prize, and I decided that I wanted to read all of the books that were on the shortlist and tried to read them before they announced what the winner was going to be. It was going to be a whole book series. It was going to be a whole video series. It's going to be my return to BookTube, and as you can see, that did not happen. So I did buy all of these books full price, which was, you know, what it is. Some of them were more successful reads than others. So the first one I read was A Passage North by Anouk Arud-Purgazam. Hope I said that name right. And I gave that one 4 stars. This one I think was one of the ones that was more memorable and enjoyable to me of the 6 that I picked up. We're following a young man, and he is in Sri Lanka. He gets this call that his grandmother's caretaker has passed away, and a lot of the novel is him journeying. Basically, he's just like journeying to this funeral. As he's journeying there, we're getting a lot of the backstory and history on stuff that happened with the grandma, with caretaker. I think this was definitely one of the more successful and deserving of the nominations. The next one is one that I absolutely hated, and I just cannot understand what this book was even about. I don't know how people enjoyed this book. If you are, I mean no offense, I just don't get it. And that one is No One Is Talking About This by Patricia Lockwood. I did not finish this book, but I still rated it 1 star because I just could not understand. This book has 3.66 rating on Goodreads, and I've seen some people put it in their like favorite books of the year. I struggled. This book was like the smallest book I probably had attempted to read all of last year. It's like 200 pages, and a lot of them are wide spaced lines, and I just could not get into it. It just made no sense to me. It made me mad as I was reading it because I just didn't understand it, and I just didn't know if I'm not smart enough, if it's going over my head. I couldn't even force myself to finish it because I forced myself to get to about page 100, and then I just was like, I'm not torturing myself anymore continuing this book. I can't tell you what it's about because I still don't know. And then another book I decided to DNF was Luncheon of the Boating Party by Susan Freeland. This is a historical fiction novel. This was not part of the Man Booker Prize. This book came out quite a few years ago. I had read previously Girl in Hyacinth Blue by this author, and so I wanted to eventually pick up something else. I just didn't really like this one as much. I tried listening to it on audiobook. I tried reading it physically. I think I got about halfway into it, and I could have finished it. I knew I would probably be maybe like a 2.5, 3 star read, and I just was already so much in a reading slump at this point that I couldn't do it to myself because I feel like after reading, especially the other one I was telling you about, No One Is Talking About This, I was just like on a DNFing mood, I guess. So then back to the Man Booker Prize nominations, I read Bewilderment by Richard Powers. This one started off, I feel like it was a bad book. I can definitely see why it was nominated for this award. We're following Theo, who is an astrobiologist, I believe. Yes, and his son, who's 9 years old, Robin, and his wife has recently passed away, and we're kind of seeing how that affects them. The story definitely ended in a different way, a way that I did not expect or see coming. And the dad, one of his main things is like he's trying to figure out how to take care of his son without putting him on medications and stuff like the school is trying to recommend for him. And he likes to create these worlds that he tells the stories to his son at night about different like made up belief worlds. A lot of them are taken from like science fiction books and stuff that he's read. There were definitely parts of the books I enjoyed, parts I didn't as much, like when he was talking about the other planets. I just kind of found those parts boring to me, so I gave this book 3 stars. I don't think it was like really bad, but it was just okay. Then we have The Fortune Men by Nadifa Mohammed, another Man Booker nominee. I gave this one 4 stars, and this one is following Mahmoud Matan. This takes place in 1950s. This was a historical fiction book. I did enjoy this one. I think I probably gave this one more like 3.5 and rounded up more to 4 stars. I don't really have too much to say about that one. It wasn't as memorable to me now looking back. And then we have Great Circle by Maggie Shipstead. This one I gave 3, maybe more like 3.5 stars. I do feel like this was a really well written book. Historical fiction is just like hit or miss for me. It's not always something I'm super into. This one kind of goes back and forth though between different points in history. I can also see why this one was nominated. I feel like it is a well written book, and if you are into historical fiction, I feel like this is something that you would really enjoy. Sorry, I'm just going to try and get through these. I feel like I'm spending way too much time on each of these books, and I need to pick up the pace a little bit because we still have quite a few more to get through. Okay, so next we have Lady Audley's Secret by Mary Elizabeth Braden. So now we're on to books that I finished in November. So Great Circle actually also, Great Circle and Fortune Men I had finished in November. And so this one, Lady Audley's Secret, was a crime classic. This one, what did I give this one? Okay, this one 4 stars. But now that I'm looking back, I feel like I probably should give it 3 because I don't even really remember too much of this book. We're following Lucy Graham. She's a newcomer to the parish. She's an impoverished governess. She ends up meeting and marrying this guy who's rich, and then I guess appearances are deceptive, and so Robert is suspecting his aunt isn't what she seems. So some of this is kind of coming back to me, but once again, I feel like it was kind of not very memorable. I'm pretty sure I put it in my unhaul pile. And then we have The Night Always Comes by Willie Vlautin. This book I picked up when I went to Powell's Books in Oregon. I went to Oregon in October, I think it was, and I wanted to pick up a book specifically from that store that's set in Oregon. This one was a very short book, easy to get through. I ended up giving it 3 stars. This book follows this woman pretty much over the course of one night as she's trying to scrounge up enough money to be able to buy her childhood home that is going to be sold if she cannot do it. So she's also taking care of her mom and her brother's special needs, and it was a really sad book, like looking at her struggling to just get by for them and their family, and the things that she gets into are a little bit over the top, and it's a little bit like a lot for what she goes through in one night and trying to not let her dream of having her family stay together in this house die. It was definitely entertaining. There's a lot of stuff, and it does go a little bit into the not so realistic side of how she's trying to come up with all this money, but I mean, most of it was definitely very believable, and I think it was a good look at just what gentrification can do to different neighborhoods and how it affects the families that have been living there for a long time. Then I read another classic, and this one was Tess of the D'Urbervilles by Thomas Hardy. I think I kind of listened to this one mostly on audiobook, and we're following Tess. This one I remember just being such a depressing book, like all this bad stuff keeps happening to her, and I gave this one 3 stars. I don't really have a lot of feelings on the book, so I feel like a lot of times when I feel that way, I just end up giving a book 3 stars. Then next we have Dune Messiah. So I read the first book in the series Dune back in January. I think it was the first book I finished in January of 2021. Oh, I haven't even been checking my light. This lighting is getting darker and darker, so I definitely need to speed this up here. I hate that it gets dark so early. Okay, hopefully that's kind of helped the lighting a little bit. I don't want to be talking to you guys in the dark here. I'm sorry, I didn't even realize how dark the lighting was getting, so I'll try to wrap this up quickly. So now we are on to Dune Messiah. Now this is part of the books that I read in November. I gave this one 4 stars. It's a sci-fi continuation of Dune. I didn't want to read this book until after I watched the movie because I thought maybe I'd have spoilers, but I didn't realize that the movie was splits. The movie is only the first half of the first book, so I could have continued with the series and it would have been fine anyway. Then I read or listened to Attica Locke's Bluebird, and I gave this one 3 stars. I also listened to the second one, which follows the same detective. So we're following this detective, and he's kind of like he's a Texas Ranger, but he takes on this case while he's technically like on suspension, and it's his name's Darren, and it takes place in Lark, think, Texas. I can't even remember for sure now. Anyway, it's kind of like this small town crime that nobody's really looking into, and it goes from there. I found his character okay. I did read the second one that was part of a series in December, Heaven My Home, because I just wanted to see, kind of what happened at the continuation at the end of the last series. Even though the mystery does wrap up, there's another thread tying both of the books together, and I thought they were okay. I gave them both 3 stars. Then I listened to the audiobook for Slow Fire Burning by Paula Hawkins, and I gave that one 3 stars. I thought this one was just okay too. I don't remember it being very memorable at all. I can't even tell you what it was about now. So finally we're on to the books for December. I finished the first book in the Live Ship Traders series by Robin Hobb. That was Ship of Magic, and I really enjoyed that one. It's definitely different from the Farseer trilogy, whereas that one we're pretty much in Fit's head the whole time. This book has a big cast of characters, and she does a really good job of really differentiating between their storylines. I never felt myself being confused or not understanding what was going on. Then I picked up 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. I really enjoyed this book. I listened to this one on audiobook. I gave it 4 stars. It's kind of like a contemporary book which does have romance in it, which isn't something I typically go for, but we're following 2 different authors, and they like knew each other when they were younger, and then now they're being reunited at a different later stage in their adult lives. I really enjoyed this book. Highly would recommend. And then I started the first book in the Xenogenesis, or it's also known as Lilith's Brood series by Octavia E. Butler. The first one is called Dawn, and this is a sci-fi post-apocalyptic story. Basically the Earth was killing itself with nuclear bombs, and this alien race saved in pods some humans, and they're now being reawakened, and we're following Lilith's perspective as all of that's happening. Then we have Black Girls Must Die Exhausted. I received the arc for this book from HarperCollins, I believe it was, and this is actually part of a trilogy. I'm really excited for the next one to come out. I'm giving this one 4 stars. This is by Jane Allen. We're following this young Black woman, and she is dating someone she's been dating for a while, and she doesn't know, exactly where things are going, but she basically finds out that she has to basically have kids now, or it's never going to happen, or she's going to have to like freeze her eggs or something. And so she thinks that she has everything that she wants, but when she finds out that she's like on this shortened timeline to get everything that she wants, things start going wrong. I really enjoyed this book. I liked all of her friends and her side characters and the relationship that she had with the grandma. I just really enjoyed this book. I can't wait to continue on with the series. ID and After the Crow Girl by Eric Axel Sund. This was like my 2nd or 3rd time attempting this book, and I just could not do it. This time I got like halfway into the book, or maybe like 1/3 of the way. And I just didn't want to power through it because I was not enjoying my time with it. Same with, this one is so unfortunate because I actually bought all the books in this series dumbly before I even read the first one, because I thought that this was going to be like a favorite series for me, but it was not. And it's called Wolf Hall. This is the first one of the Thomas Cromwell series by Hilary Mantel, and this one is also a Man Booker Prize winner, which I guess I'm kind of seeing after this experiment of reading so many Man Booker nominees and winners, that I'm just not really into them. And I really tried. I got like 100 and something pages into it, but everybody has the same name. Everything was so confusing, and I just kind of gave up. I was not gonna force myself to continue on with it. Now we're on to the final 3 books I finished this year. So the first was Hell of a Book by Jason Mott. This one I think won the National Book Prize or something. I hadn't really heard of it before. It wasn't on my radar. I loved the audiobook for this. Like, this book almost got 5 stars for me, except there were some parts I was a little bit confused on, so maybe like 4.5 stars. We're following this African-American author who's on this cross-country tour promoting his book, and he basically has these hallucinations where he like talks to people and he knows that they aren't there, but he meets on his journey this one kid he calls the Kid, and he's like basically like dark as night, and we kind of go back into some of the kids' background as well. I'm gonna do a terrible job at trying to explain what this book was about. I just found this audiobook very enjoyable. The author does break that fourth wall with the readers at times, and I found myself enjoying that part. Like, it wasn't too much or anything. Then I finished Circus of Wonders by Elizabeth McNeil. I gave this one 4 stars. This is a book following a young woman who she has this condition where she has all these birthmarks all over her body. Her dad basically ends up selling her away to this circus, and this circus follows this guy who's kind of not a good guy, and his brother. And I enjoyed this book. It's a beautiful book. It has the most beautiful sprayed edges. I will try to insert a picture of it here because I'm too lazy to go get it from my shelves. But if you like books centered around circuses, I think this one was a good one. Not my favorite, but it was still entertaining. And then lastly, we have Harlem Shuffle by Colson Whitehead, which I ended up giving 3 stars. I thought this book was definitely entertaining. I love Colson Whitehead's writing. This one for me, I don't know what it was just missing something. I didn't enjoy it as much as I did The Nickel Boys or Underground Railroad, although I did appreciate that it was kind of centered around a heist, and that I thought maybe would make it a little bit more interesting to me. I definitely did enjoy learning a little bit more about Harlem, especially back in the 60s, and how things were more on the not so shiny side as part of the like criminal side of Harlem. Oh, and there's one other book I have to go back and mention, which was the one that actually won the Man Booker Prize for last year, and that was The Promise by Damon Galgut. I don't know if I said that right. I don't even remember now what I gave this book because apparently I never moved it from my want to read shelf to my read shelf. This one follows a South African family, and they live in a farm outside Pretoria. They're all gathering for Ma's funeral, and we're following the younger generation who basically, Salome, I think is how you say it, she was a black woman who worked for their family all their lives. She was promised to have her house that she lived in on the property, and it's basically all of them failing to fulfill their mother's wishes, and we follow all of the siblings and their lives after that. I could see why this one won. For sure it was a good book. I think from what I can remember, it honestly wasn't super memorable though to me. So I don't think I'll probably do this again this year unless there's like a lot of books that I'm really interested in. I don't think I'm going to read all of Man Booker Prize shortlist again because I just kind of spent my money on a lot of books that I kind of forgot about. So those are all the books that I read in the second half of 2021. I hope that you guys enjoyed seeing my sorry, a little bit briefly rushed thoughts on these books, but I wanted to say something rather than nothing on all of these books and have like a nice way to end up my reading year. And I hope that you guys enjoy this video. Thanks for sticking around. I know this was a long one for sure, and the lighting situation is a little bit iffy, but we made it. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you want to support my channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye!